And hello for those of you on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Now you guys are joining us, and I appreciate you guys being here as well. And of course, my friends there on Clapper on TikTok. I don't know what happened. For some reason, I don't know why, but my iPad, which I shouldn't have done that, said that I was using too many apps in the background. I don't know. So I'm using some type of different. I mean, I'm not even using the my regular thing here. So let me just figure this out. This is an old. I mean, we're talking like I can't even believe this iPad is even working. I mean, when I tell you this is an old iPad, folks, I'm telling you this is like whoo. Well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to look like I have no idea what I'm doing here. I really have no idea. I don't know. So we'll figure it out. But anyway, I don't. Anyway, who knows? Who knows? But it's working. That's all I know. So yeah, Clapper's is working beautiful, but for some reason this resolution it's kind of kooky. So I don't know, folks. You know what I mean? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? But we're here, and I appreciate everybody being here. So it works. You guys can see, and I can. Yeah, what are you gonna do? All right. Welcome, everybody, to the presentation. My name is Bishop James Long, and I thank you so very much for being here today. Well, hello there, Megs. I'm glad you're over here. Thank you, Megs. Over Clapper, so we can have because the other day we were having some issues with Clapper. But anyway, so today is Friday. Happy Friday to all of you. I truly do hope that you're all having a beautiful, beautiful Friday. Yeah, I don't know what happened to my iPad. My iPad was like in cuckoo, so I had to switch it to a 1920s iPad. So I don't know. You know what I mean? I can't. It looks the picture looks right here on Clapper, but for some reason I look jaundice. I guess that's the word. And I have no idea how in the world to fix that. I guess it doesn't matter. I mean, as long as it works, right? I don't want to do this. What? See, I'm pushing buttons and I have no idea what I'm doing. I tell you what, folks, I'll end up a sticker. I don't want to do a sticker. I don't want filters either. See, that's the thing. Aha, that's what it was. Aha. Looky there, everybody. Looky. It had a filter on, and I did not put a filter on because this is a 1920s iPad. I've never ran the show on this iPad. So it had a weird, kooky, a filter. Anyway, here we are. I appreciate all of you being here. Now, a couple things. If you want, folks, please do me a favor and do yourself a favor. I really would love for you to visit the company that sponsors the show. Now, all of our shows, we're on Sundays, we're on Wednesdays, we have Bible studies, we are on Fridays for the paranormal, and then of course Saturdays is open mic. So we're on a lot. And I do, I really appreciate them. I do. So here's what I want you to do. If you love the paranormal like I do, and I make no apologies because I love the paranormal, then I want you to go to this website, KGRADB. So that's dog bicycle. So KGRADB.com. They have some fantastic shows there, guys. They really do. And now I want you to subscribe. It's very inexpensive. It truly is. It's very, very, very affordable. And they have some great shows. This show airs there on KGRAD, plus a lot of other great shows as well. My great friend, Andrea Perrin. I love her. She's I tell you, I every time that I talk about Andrea, I cannot praise her enough. She is such a beautiful, beautiful soul. She truly is. If you ever meet her, you'll know what I mean. She lived in a Conjuring house. She grew up in the Conjuring house, so she was there. And her show is right after this one. So anyway, the website is kgradb.com, and I want you to subscribe, but put Bishop as your promo code. That's going to save you 30% off your subscription. Again, it's already very, very affordable, but why not save even more money? Okay, so please do that. Also, I want you to go to my website. BishopJamesLong.com. That is simple as that. BishopJamesLong, LONG.com. Now, I do have an online store there. People always ask me about Saint Benedict. I am a Benedictine. Saint Benedict is the patron saint for exorcists. And you can go to the store, and we do have, this is I love this. I truly do. This is a Benedictine necklace, and it has the front and it does have the back. What I like about it is it's rope, because a lot of people can't, wear certain metals, and because certain metals will break you out. This obviously it's a rope. It won't break you out, and it has a really cool adjuster here to where you can make it tighter or looser. But anyway, I love mine, and this is mine. And you can go to the website, bishopjameslong.com, and click on the store link and purchase yours. Now, I will bless it for free. You're not buying a blessed item. That's called simony. But I bless it as a courtesy. I don't have to. If you don't want me to bless it, I don't. But I just do it as a courtesy because a lot of people don't know. Saint Benedict is the patron saint for exorcists. And a lot of people call upon Saint Benedict to help protect against the demonic. So thank you very much, Mr. Producer. There it is so bishopjameslong.com, and click on the store link. People also ask, well, how can we help your clergy or your ministry? Folks, I don't get paid as being clergy. And I never charge for going to people's homes. Never have, never will. So if you want to help with a ministry, I would be greatly appreciate that. Plus the people that I help will as well. So you can go to bishopjameslong.com, scroll down to where it says ministry expenses, and make a donation. I do have several cases right now that I am working. Everything is on hold right now until I get my car fixed. That's another mess. My transmission went out on my car. So as soon as that's done, then I can finally start getting out there. But anyway, bishopjameslong.com. So there we go. Now, also the church's website is usocc.org. If you want to know about the church's website, it's usocc.org. That's it. You can just go to that site. And finally, one more order of business is we have night prayer. Night prayer is Compline. When I studied in the Roman Catholic Seminary for the priesthood, we had Compline every night. We had prayer every night. And I invite you to join us. It's Monday through Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everybody can, it's strictly on Spreaker, which is an audio format. And you can go to that website there on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can see that on that site. Or you can just simply go to bishopjameslong.com and just scroll down to the bottom. Mr. Producer, why don't we do that from now on? Instead of using that URL, just bishopjameslong.com, and just scroll down to the bottom. It's easier for people to remember that. And then you'll see, if you scroll down to the very bottom, it says night prayer. If you click it, bam, there you go. Okay. Well, thank you, Sharon. That's very nice. Sharon on TikTok says, I appreciate your night prayer. Thank you. That's very, very kind of you, Sharon. Thank you. I love it. I love it. Because life is stressful, isn't it? Life is very stressful. And we are bombarded with all these messages and images on social media and the news of World War III. Thank you very much. I appreciate Crossroads. And we're just, it's overwhelming. And sometimes it gets to a point where you're like, you know what? I can't take this anymore. I just can't take it. And night prayer is a time for you just to kind of sit back, forget all the stress, and just kind of focus on centering yourself and forgetting all the stress of life, because it does. There's a lot of stress that comes with social media and the World War III and all this other stuff. It's just too much. It's too much. Okay, so let me just say a couple things before we get into the presentation. I have 3 different screens that I'm running right now. I can't get on Triller. Shannon Long 30, she's my sister. I tried to get on Triller, go live, and I can't do it. It won't let me go live. So I got to figure that out. So for those of you who don't know, I am running here to my friends there on Clapper. I'm running here, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, KGRADB, and Spreaker. And then I'm running over here on this 1920 iPad for TikTok. So please understand, a lot of people are asking me questions on a lot of different formats. I'm getting messages on Instant Messenger on Facebook. I'm getting messages from here. I'll do the best I can. So the first hour, we're going to be talking about a topic that I think is very important to discuss. Yeah, your ADD would. It is tough because there's so much to kind of operate here. Tonight we're talking about cults. So for the first hour, until 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will talk about cults. And then at 8 o'clock, I'm going to give my movie review for the brand new movie that just came out called The Pope's Exorcist, which I saw today. And I have a lot to say about that, good and bad. But I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to be brutally honest and tell you exactly what I thought and what I didn't like. Okay? So there we go. And finally, one thing, for those of you who are, if you're on TikTok or if you're on Clapper, and if you offer gifts to the ministry, I'm so very, very sorry if I don't say thank you. It's not because I'm being rude. It's just because I'm looking at so many different computers that I just can't see. Okay, so let me just say that. Thank you very much for the subscribers on TikTok and Clapper, and thank you very much for the gifts to the ministry, as well as all of you. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to give a movie review on the Pope's Exorcist today. So for now, let's talk about a topic that I think is very, very important. And I'm going to say this first before we get it. Thank you. And by the way, if I say thank you, it's probably because I saw someone offering a thank you there. Someone just subscribed. Thank you. So if I say thank you, it's because someone offered a gift to the ministry. I am deeply concerned. For those of you who have no idea who I am, I serve as the exorcist for the United States Old Catholic Church. I have been validly trained. I studied in the Roman Catholic Seminary to study for the priesthood for 6 years. I was mentored by the Jesuits and the Benedictines. And so my life, my entire life has been devoted to the study of demonology, angelology. And as of today, I've performed 30 documented exorcisms on people who are validly possessed. I help the paranormal community, and I've been doing this for over 2 decades now because there were no clergy, and none, except for one, Father Andrew Calder, who is a friend of mine, dear friend of mine, who's passed away. There was no clergy helping the paranormal community, none. We were the only two. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So I've seen a lot. I've debunked a lot. And we're going to talk about exorcisms in a moment. But one thing that I want to point something out, especially about cults, I am seeing a lot, and I mean, this is concerning to me. I am seeing a lot of people claiming to be prophets. Gosh darn, TikTok just kicked me off. What is going on? I don't know if, I hope TikTok didn't kick me off, or if it was just a resume. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Yeah, for some reason it kicked me off. Now I'm back on, so I don't know what's going on. We're having issues with the internet here, and again, it's because I have a 1920 iPad. So bear with me. And if that doesn't work, I'll try one more iPad. It's frustrating. What are you going to do? Okay, yeah, let's go ahead. Well, I can turn the comments off, and I'll turn them back on later on. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's frustrating for me too. I just turn the comments off. I'll turn them back on TikTok in a bit. I don't know why it's doing it, but one thing that I'm going to say something that's very, very important. Thank you for subscribing. Is I'm seeing a lot of people on social media where they are pastors and they're claiming to be prophets. Now, here's the problem. I don't have an issue with someone who believe that they are a prophet. That's not necessarily the issue. That raises some red flags for me for a variety of reasons. But one thing that I am noticing that I have a deep concern for. Let me and I think you need to. I'm going to turn the comments on because in case people can't hear or something, there's no way for me to know. I'm deeply concerned with people who say that they are a prophet and then telling people that they have to give them money in order to be blessed, that they are using false miracles, fake miracles to convince people that they are of God, and that you must listen to them. Not only that, but here, well, thank you there, Jackie, I appreciate that. But here's what I'm deeply concerned about. What's happening now is a lot of people are claiming to be prophets, And then they say, well, I'm going to prophesy over you. And basically, they're giving people a psychic reading, is what they're doing in the name of God. You see, that was the blasphemy that they talked about in the Old Testament, because people would use God as a way to rip people off. In this case, multiple gods for them. But I'm seeing a lot of people now, what they'll say is, okay, so it's immediate. It's psychic readings is what they're offering. And they're using the God topic to convince people that the Holy Spirit or God is sending them messages about people, about their family. But here's the problem. The issue is that people are doing that and then requiring that people pay them money before they can give them a prophecy. So they'll say, I have a prophecy for you. I have a prophecy for you. And I want to prophesy. I want to tell you the Holy Spirit, but it's $5,000. How important is this message from God to you? And then people will pay this. And so now what they're doing is they are giving they're basically giving psychic readings, and they're using religion and calling themselves a prophet instead of actually calling themselves a psychic. And that's their workaround is what they're doing. And here's what bothers me, what really, really irritates me, and I'm going to be bluntly blunt. I'm very blunt anyway, but I'm going to be straightforward on this. There are many countries that are doing this, and there's specifically there's certain countries that have even killed and burnt women alive and claimed that they were witches because they were offering psychic mediumship to people. And so the society, the people that the towns that would actually burn people alive. And saying, well, you're a witch, you're prophesying, and you're giving mediumship, and the devil's talking to you. And then they would accuse them of being a witch, and they kill them. Well, now what these con artists are doing is they're doing psychic readings, but they're doing it under the name of God. So that's okay. You see, that's okay to them because they're claiming God is speaking to them. But yet these are the very same people that murdered innocent women and claimed that they were witches and evil and all this other stuff. But it's okay for the men to do that. You see, that's the problem that I have with this. It's such hypocrisy. So I'm telling you, stay away from these people. They are not listening to God. That is not the Spirit of God that they're listening to. If anyone is telling you that they are a prophet and that you are required to offer seed, that you're required to offer money in order to get a reading from God, that's a con artist. That is an absolute con artist. And I'm not, look, I'm just, we can look at all kinds of denominations, say, well, that denomination's bad, that denomination. I'm not saying that. I'm simply letting people know that I'm seeing this and I have a problem with it. So just stay away from that. Just stay away from it because it's a con artist. They're using God to give psychic readings, and that's okay. But yet when a woman does it in those same towns, then they're accused of witchcraft and they're burning them alive. That's appalling. That is appalling. Okay. So let's go into this. Cults. The mass suicide of 900 men, women, and children in Guyana jungle in 1978 brought home to many people the danger of religious fanaticism. You probably have heard the Reverend Jim Jones led his followers from California into an isolated South American village because of the pressure of the 20th century world and his conviction of an approaching apocalypse or a dramatic end to the world. You see, everyone outside that community was seen as an enemy, leading eventually to such a feeling of desperate persecution. All of Jones' followers were persuaded by him to take a lethal poison drink. And this man, if he had just, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Jen. If he had just, he was fighting for diversity and inclusion, and he was fighting against racism. If he had stayed on that path, And then I truly believe, and many civil rights leaders have said this, that he probably would have been one of those leaders that many people would have respected as fighting for civil rights. The problem is he used that to con people. There was one situation where he was telling people that it was fraud, that somebody had shot a gun, but it was a little further away from where the church was, and he fell down immediately, and he had fake blood. And people thought, oh my gosh, he's been shot. He's been shot. So they took him into the chapel, and he just told him, just leave. I'm going to resurrect myself. Just leave. And then he came out. He came out of the church, and all of a sudden he was healed, magically healed. And people saw the little bullet hole there in the shirt. But this is the type of stuff. And not only that, but in many of his sermons, he would take the Bible and throw it down on the ground and say, you don't need to listen to this. Those words, you don't need to listen to me. You need to listen to my words. I am the one that's going to give you into heaven. I'm the one. This is a problem. So 15 years later, in 1993, another leader made similar prophecies to his followers. They retreated, not to another country, but a heavily defended compound where they stockpiled food and ammunition sufficient to withstand an armed military-style attack. And most of you know this community had come over a period of time to view those in authority as agents of evil forces directed against their chosen way of life. A simple approach from law enforcement officers brought about a siege conditions at Waco, Texas, but they went above and beyond. They went too far, which ended in a Holocaust, killing virtually almost everyone who was left in the compound of the buildings. The charismatic leader we know is David Koresh had prophesied such a fiery end as the ultimate confirmation of the accuracy of his teachings. Since then, there have been mass cult suicides in Canada, Switzerland, by members of the Solar Temple cult. In California, another group believed that a passing comet had come to take them to a better world. It was a sign to them of Heaven's Gate. The 39 young people who took their own lives believed they were servants of a higher source, the name they used for their group. And when their bodies were discovered, they were all identically dressed and lying neatly in a similar posture. Another group, Om Supreme Truth in Japan, they didn't take their own lives, but unleashed a powerful poisonous gas in trains and on the Tokyo subway, affecting thousands of city commuters. With this development, it became apparent that cults were not only a danger to their own members, but could pose a serious threat to the general public. Perhaps the most worrying aspect, I think, of the examples already cited in the way young people and sometimes children are involved. Parents are naturally very concerned, lest their own children are drawn into the activities of a cult and away from the principles. Warnings are sometimes given about different groups who target those who are young and impressionable. So we need to know the factors which mark out cults and what it can do and make them very dangerous and lead to tragedies, Jonestown or Waco, Texas. So we need to first determine the factors that create a cult. Let me explain this. Some literature circulated by various cult help groups suggests that any organization what does not accept the teachings of the mainstream Christian churches, some people say that's a cult. But governments have struggled with the concept of outlawing organizations they believe to pose a danger and have generally followed the definitions given, about extremism. But here's some key practices that you need to pay very close attention to, which attract the designation cult. This is some of the things that happens. Number one, the leader is usually charismatic, very charismatic. And it becomes to a point where the people in the group begin to idolize one individual as a leader. And then activities designed to reduce powers of discrimination and deter questions. So control of what matters, what members wear, what eat or drink. It's a withdrawal from general society. These factors are intended to make the group very close-knit. It's the world against us. And they bond individual members to the group, but more particularly to the leader, who is usually very charismatic and dominant personality and very sadistic. In the process, and incredibly manipulative as well. Now, in the process of being bonded to the group and its leader, members are gradually alienated from the rest of society. And in extreme cases, they're removed totally from society to live as if they have nothing to do with normal life. So one thing that they always do is isolation. Some of the ways this isolation is achieved are distinctly worrying. Potential recruits to the group they are encouraged to distance themselves even from families and even friends, all those who are likely to have the greatest influence upon them. You see, separated from previous contacts, the recruits are subjected to intense persuasion by group members. And this peer group pressure quickly replaces the previous influence of family and friends. The recruits are overwhelmed with a sense of immediate acceptance. In essence, what happens is they are what's called love bombed with flattery, hugging, touching, kissing, just inflated ego. You are the most important person in the world. Thank gosh you're here. They're never left alone for long periods to collect and recover their thoughts. And by just an insistence on attending long meetings. David Koresh at Waco would sometimes have Bible study for hours upon hours and hours. And if you fell asleep, you were severely reprimanded. And that basically, and Jonestown, he did the same thing. What he would do is he would purposely mess up their sleep patterns to deprive them of the sleep so they would be absolutely exhausted. So they couldn't think, for they were just tired. It's breaking down the intellect and will of the person, very much like a demonic does. So it deprives them of sleep, any natural resistance. It's quickly destroyed there. Now you have to remember the effect of this withdrawal, and you're right, love bombing is a characteristic of narcissism. The effect of this withdrawal from society in general is often revealed only when an individual who has been attracted to a cult seeks to leave it. So great pressure is applied. There's a great psychological pressure, sometimes physical force, to encourage the individual to change his or her mind. In the case of Jonestown, they actually took the people's passports. So if they take their passports and they wouldn't give them back to them, and then they had people surrounding the compound with weapons. So family members who have not joined the group are described as enemies, and leaving the group is seen as a personal attack upon the leader, him or herself. Now let's talk about these leaders. You have to understand, here's one marking of a cult, especially a religious cult. If you see any type of religious community and everything is about that leader, it's appraise, it's glorifying, and then there have been some preachers that actually have said they are a prophet and you have no business questioning them, and if you do, you will burn in the fiery pits of hell. That is a form of control and breaking down the intellect and will of the person. Everything. I saw one individual on TikTok who claims to be a prophet, and this individual has a little church or whatever, gathering community, and by the altar is a big picture of herself. It's extreme narcissism, very unhealthy. On the altar is a picture of her. That's a cult. If you're going to, and they call themselves Christians. If you're a Christian, then why do you have a great big picture of the leader at the altar? That's a problem. And everything, I mean, it's extreme praise to the leader. It's overwhelming. And everything is about the leader. So you have to understand, dependence on the leader is encouraged by a series of complex games with rules imposed by the leader. So gradually members are conditioned to stop thinking for themselves. They're strongly encouraged to accept unquestioningly the leader's teachings and decisions. Sometimes there's chanting or singing from a large part and that bonds individuals to the group. It's well known that this practice quickly blocks rational thought process. It's brainwashing. So together, even some have a special diet, often sometimes nutritionally inadequate, especially in Jonestown. Recruits become more susceptible to suggestions which would otherwise be immediately dismissed. Look, it's easy to see how this approach can quickly tip over into even more unacceptable practices, where a leader uses his or her influence to bind recruits to himself or herself by sexual domination. David Koresh was a perfect example of this. Any leaders, any members of the Branch Davidians, the men were not allowed at all. Were not allowed. Even if you were married to someone, you were not allowed to have relations with your wife or your husband. Nope. The only person that was allowed, the only individual that was allowed to have sexual relations with the women was David Koresh. Because he convinced these, and we're talking about highly educated people. We're not talking about people who have, who are susceptible to anything and believe anything. There was a lawyer there. There was a theologian. There were some very, very intelligent people who followed David Koresh. And he convinced them because he convinced them because he was the Messiah, that only he could have relations with them, and not because he wanted to, because he said he felt that was his obligation. So his favorites are granted small but significant privileges, giving them a sense of importance that the Messiah has chosen you, while the less favored are encouraged to try harder to please him, and thus come even more under his dominion. So you have to also, the careful use of drugs purchased on behalf of the recruits is another sinister way of taking control of recruits, the minds and their lives. Sometimes recruits have to hand over all their personal wealth, everything, to the group, because they live in accommodation provided for them. They're soon completed, they are indebted to the group for everything that they need. And the definitions have been developed. The aspect which classify an organization as a cult are important when we come to consider these horrible individuals who do this to people. In some literatures published about cults, warnings are sounded against the beliefs. And we'll talk about, I'm going to give you some examples of some cults. So, for example, let's say you want to try to leave a cult. Well, one characteristic of cults is their unreasonable control of individual members. Great emotional pressure is applied to anybody who wishes to leave the cult. If this pressure is resisted and all formal ties with the group are cut, the individual is completely shunned, treated as an outcast, even told they're going to burn in the fiery pits of hell. All social contact is ended, and the person is considered as good as dead. It's terrible what they do. If a family member or if a member has a family which does not share their beliefs, they're encouraged not to just completely separate themselves, because the cult leader will say that's the devil trying to cause you to walk away from us. So let's talk about the cults that are active today. There's a cult called Happy Science. And if you're looking for a mashup of world religions, New Age, hokum, far-right nationalism, infrastructure spending, then Japanese cult Happy Science is it. It was founded in 1986 by Roha Okawa. It's a former salaryman who was entrapped by a group called the Good Light Association. He soon formed his own cult of personality called the Science of Happiness, changed his name to Happy Science a few years later. So Okawa believes he is the human incarnation of a supreme being. This person combines Christ, the Buddha, Muhammad, and every other prophetic deity to create a 9-dimensional heaven with him at the head, of course. He's also created a massively complex mythology of New Age nonsense, while simultaneously founding a political wing called the Happiness Realization Party. Here's where the strangeness goes into overdrive. As his party advocates a vicious Japanese nationalism devoted to denying historical cruelties, advocating conflict with China and North Korea, rebuilding Japan's infrastructure. The group claims to have 12 million members around the world, has a multimedia arm, and of course, enjoys a tax-exempt status in the United States. There's a group called Raelism, and one of the most notorious cults of the modern era. It began in 1974 with a Frenchman, Claude Vorilhon, calling himself Rael. Vorilhon claimed that he had a vision of an alien spacecraft in southern France that was full of beings who told him humans were the future and handed him a Bible. Over 6 days, the head alien, who he called Yahweh, explained to Vorilhon how the Old Testament is an actual record of humanity's early days, and that he must build an embassy to welcome the aliens when they fully return. Now, for the next 3 decades, Raelians were basically a kooky hippie cult, basically, that worshiped space aliens. They opposed aggression, championed science, all liked, and they like to be disrobed and having relations, sexual relations with as many people as they possibly can. They amassed a following of 20,000 people. They became very popular in Asia. Then in 2002, things got weird, or even stranger. Raelian-owned company called Clonade claimed to have done the impossible and cloned a human, a baby girl they named Eve. So everyone went nuts then. The White House even weighed in. Lawsuits filed, claims of a dozen other human clones popping up. To date, no evidence of any actual clones has actually appeared. But the company continues selling an embryonic cell fusion device for over $9,000, despite nobody knows what it does. The next cult is the Brethren. So again, these are cults. The Brethren, also known as Body of Christ, or the garbage eaters. The Brethren are an apocalyptic offshoot of the 70s Jesus movement, eschewing worldly positions. The worldly possessions are terrible. They save earthly pleasures to purify themselves for the coming end of the world. The Brethren members essentially live as vagrants, doing odd jobs to survive, eating trash, avoiding bathing and medical treatment, giving whatever money they do make to the group. They also forbid dancing, and you can't laugh. Can't laugh until the coming of Christ. They bar members from communicating with family and forbid contact between binary genders. Group founder Jim Roberts, he passed away in December 2015. So right now, it's kind of unclear as far as where they're going now. Now, here's another group that I think is very problematic. And yes, I do think it is a cult. The Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. It is don't get that confused with Mormonism. The FLDS, which is Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, it's an offshoot of Mormonism that's constantly in the news for unsavory reasons. FLDS openly embraces polygamy, which the mainstream LDS outlawed a century ago. So the LDS is not the FLDS. The group has anywhere about 6,000 to 10,000 members, usually in Utah and Arizona, with the group having pretty much total control of 2 small linked border towns in 2 states. So while Mormon splinter groups, they've been around for long before, the FLDS was incorporated in 1991 by a group of men who had been excommunicated by the church. And they went through a range of leaders who all declared themselves prophets, of course, until being taken over by Rulon Jeffs in 2002. He passed shortly thereafter, and his son, Warren, very disturbing human being. I mean, this guy, he certainly was not listening to Christ. What he did was unfathomable. I mean, so Jeff Warren, it was under Warren's that the FLDS practice of child marriage, folks, bigamy, incest, racism, abandonment of teenage boys. Why? Because the elders, the men in the community, wanted to get rid of the teenage boys because they didn't want competition for the women. That's how sick this is. So many of the teenage boys were told that they had to leave, and they had nowhere to go. They're in this cult, and then when they become teenagers, because now they're hitting puberty, they're saying, no, you got to go, because they did not want these teenage boys to be competitive with these sick, pedophile, elderly men who used God to justify raping young women. Young girls. Children. That's not God. That is not God. That is demonic. And not only that, but you could not, if you were a woman, you could not just marry whomever you wish if you fell in love. No. You had to get the bishop's permission. The bishop would tell you who to marry. And oftentimes it was, if you were a 13-year-old girl, if you entered into, if you had your first menstrual cycle, that was it. Then you could be auctioned off, sold off to an elder, a 50, 60-year-old disgusting, filthy pig who had probably 20 or 30 women already, and you had no choice. You had no say in the matter. These people should be locked up. They should be locked up. It's disgusting. By the way, Jeff was sent to prison in 2007. But believe it or not, he continues to be the de facto head of the church while his successors squabble for power. This man should never, ever, ever be ever let out. And every single man who considers themselves to be an elder, every single one of them who married and was given a child as a wife should be arrested. I understand separation of church and state. This is not separation of church and state. This is rape of a child. They should close the whole damn thing down. I don't understand. I get it. They're a very powerful group, but it's disgusting. The next group is called 12 Tribes. Formed in 1972 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the 12 Tribes have gone by a number of names and have an international presence. Formed out of the Jesus movement, out of the early 70s of Elbert Spriggs, the group started off as an offshoot of a prayer group for teenagers, which broke off from the Presbyterian Church after a January service was canceled in favor of watching the Super Bowl. Well, spreading quickly around the South, the group embraced peace and love vibe. Okay. The hippie culture was going out, and they sought out to recreate the first century Christian church described in the book of Acts. And as such, they have no formal ties to any branch of Christianity. They practice Messianic Jewish beliefs that teach Jews were responsible for the slaying of Christ. They seek to establish the 12 Israeli tribes around the world to basically bring in the end of the world. And they've also been accused of being a cult and exploiting their children for slave labor and tax evasion. They have about 2,500 to 3,000 members. The Nuwaubian Nation, formerly known as the United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors, is a cult, a personality based around the founder Dwight York, combining Christianity, ancient Egyptian iconography, African rituals, and a belief that aliens are coming. The nation believes that 144,000 chosen people will be taken away in a flying city, spirited to Orion to prepare for the final fight against Satan. Shockingly, the York's mismatch of New Age concepts, Black power, militancy, and ancient Egyptian religion caught on in both the hip-hop community and in rural Georgia, where York built a massive compound made with donated funds. So York's mythology grew, anti-government conspiracies, and linguistics. Even as the cult grew, York was under investigation, and he finally detained in 2002 for running a massive child trafficking ring. Imagine that. Compromising as many as 1,000 children. He was sent to prison for life, and his compound was seized and demolished. Believe it or not, folks, the group still exists, though in much smaller numbers. There's another group called Congregation for the Light. It avoids the backwater compounds common to many cults, instead having its headquarters in the heart of Manhattan, but it has much else in common with cults, including all-powerful control by one bizarre racial theory about Aryans and Atlantis. They're doomsday prepping, complex mythology involving owls, strange medical claims about cancer being caused by bad karma, shunning those who break away, and a powerful grip on the personal lives of members. Oh, and by the way, it marries old men off to young girls and enjoys a tax-exempt status as a religion. How are these religions? No. How are these cults who claim to be religion that are raping children? How are they getting tax exempt status? Take the tax exempt status away if they're raping children. The Light only has 200 members, but they're kept in virtual seclusion, often born into the cult by members' parents, and most of their money comes from pillaging the estates of deceased members. Isn't that a great place? This is just, there are so many that I could go on and on. There's a Church Universal and Triumphant. It's another cult, the person out in New Age clothes, the CUT, that's what the abbreviation for it, Cult Universal and Triumphant, was founded in 1975. It's an offshoot of a different movement, Summit Lighthouse. Founder Elizabeth Clare Prophet pitched herself and her husband as messengers of the ascended masters, a set of spiritually awakened ancient beings central to the belief of that they are the gods. They also threw in elements of Christian Science, the I Am movement, and Mormon-style doomsday prepping. The prophets grew wealthy enough to buy large spreads in Santa Monica Mountains in Montana, while members drove themselves into debt, building fallout shelters and paying huge sums of money to reserve a spot in the post-nuclear conflict society. The church was also accused of making illicit straw purchases and of using sleep deprivation against members who attempted to leave. In ill health, the prophet retired in 1999 and passed 10 years later. So since then, the church basically has gone through legal problems and succession squabbles, but members are still met on a regular basis, believe it or not. I can't understand why these people, they're so brainwashed, and I feel so sorry for them, because these cult leaders are extreme, narcissistic, dangerous individuals. There's a group called the NXIVM, the NXIVM, basically, it's what they're called. If you thought cults were what I think of the past, no. Keith Raniere started the NXIVM in 1998 as positioning the group as a self-help organization with workshops and classes in empowerment. NXIVM amassed more than 18,000 followers across North America until 2007, when NXIVM members came forward to expose the abusive practices of a secret society within the group. Women were recruited under the false pretense that they were joining a sisterhood of sorts, but it ended up being a sex cult. Isn't that? Don't you see a pattern? A pyramid scheme existed within the group, with Raniere, who members called Vanguard, at the top, masters who recruited other women to the secretive group, and at the bottom were the newest recruits, who were, believe it or not, referred to as slaves. And a former member recounted to the New York Times that in order to be admitted to the secret club, she had to give her master naked photos and other compromising documents that would be used as blackmail if she ever told anyone about the group's existence. So, by the way, in 2020, Raniere was tried in court, where more than a dozen women came forward with statements regarding his psychological and sexual abuse. He was convicted of many crimes, including sex trafficking, racketeering, child pornography. Victims were as young as 15 years old. And Raniere was sentenced to life in prison. But in a court filing, his lawyers wrote, he is not sorry for his conduct or his choices. So the Wild story has since inspired two docuseries, if you want to know. It's called The Vow on HBO Max and Seduced, inside the NXIVM cult on stars. Terrible. These people are truly demonic. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Another group called the Children of God. We'll get there. We'll get there, Joe. There's a lot of cults. A lot of people don't realize how many cults there are. There are a lot. I have right now, I could easily do a 3-hour show right now telling you every single cult that I know of, and it wouldn't even touch 25%. Let that sink in. 3 hours, I could do 3 hours easily tonight, and I still wouldn't be able to get through every one of them. So the Children of God cult, it's initially called the Teens for Christ. It's a Children of God. It was founded in 1968 by a rogue preacher called David Berg in California, attracting young runaways and hippies. Berg preached a kind of a worship that combined the ways of Christ with free love movement of the 60s. Group living, zealous, proselytizing, isolated communes were all pillars of the Children of God Church. Members who amounted to 15,000 people across the world at its peak. They didn't go to work, didn't go to school. The Children of God didn't believe in the nuclear family, so children were grouped together and lived separately from their parents. In the late 1970s, the Children of God became notorious for the sexual practices that one of Berg's own daughters later described as religious prostitution. Berg actually coined the term flirty fishing, the sexual practice in which women would allegedly have sex with men to bring them into the cult. And Berg promoted and encouraged the sexualization of children within the Children of God community. This is disgusting. Berg died in 1994 while under FBI investigation, and the Children of God cult continues to exist even today, but now goes by the name Family International. Stay away from them. Although now the group claims that the horrific practices are a thing of the past, and you can actually watch a whole entire documentary. It's called Children of God. It used to be on Netflix. I don't know if it's on now. There's another Church of the Lamb of God. So, because God allowed it, Louise. Okay, God allowed it. The devil does not resurrect without God's permission, and I actually taught that. I taught that. I would encourage you. The question Louise is asking, a long time fellow, but thank you. But if God is the only person who can bring back anybody to life, how did the devil bring back the Antichrist after he died? I taught that. I'm teaching that right now in Revelation. So, I unfortunately, because I can't repeat it because it's long and people are here to listen about cults, I encourage you to go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/Bishop James Long, and just kind of go back to January the 8th and watch it from the beginning. I explained all that. So because otherwise this is going to become a revelation class and people didn't tune in for that. So there you go. But you check it out. I think it was a couple months ago I talked about that. The Children of the Lamb of God. It's dubbed by the media as the Mormon Manson. So the Church of the Lamb of God was started by Orville LeBaron in Mexico after he clashed and left his brother, Joel's sect. LeBaron convinced his followers that he received a direct instruction from God, which included using an abandoned Mormon doctrine, blood atonement, that allows the killing of sinners to cleanse them of evil. LeBaron had 51 children with 13 different wives, and over 2 decades amassed hundreds of followers who allegedly murdered more than 20 people on behalf of LeBaron and his orders. Mexico authorities arrested LeBaron in 1979 and handed him over to the FBI, where he was charged for the murder of another polygamous sect leader and jailed for life in Utah. Although LeBaron died in prison for 1981, his reign of terror still persisted for several years as he left behind a hit list of people he believed were traitors. And yes, by the way, there is another episode of Oxygen's Deadly Cults that covers as many crimes. The People's Temple, I just talked about that. The People's Temple is Jim Jones. I mean, this is terrible what he did. Jones eventually, by the way, came to believe that the nuclear war was imminent. And so he moved his followers to South America. They lived there several years and as the People's Temple Agricultural Project, but no one could leave. And so what happened is a lot of family members were very concerned. And so they contacted congressmen. And a particular individual, congressman, showed up there. He was a San Francisco congressman, Leo Ryan, and he had the media with him. I mean, some well-known media personalities. What was crazy is they showed up to this location, and both thought, the media thought that they were under the protection of the congressman. But the congressman actually thought that he was also going to be protected by the media. So they had no security. And they showed up to this location to confront Jim Jones about this. And it was very, Jim Jones, what he did to these people, I mean, he brainwashed them. It was terrible, terrible. And he would have drills. He would, white lightning, in the middle of the night. And he would wake people up in the middle of the night, and they would have to go to the pavilion. And he would have to, because basically he was getting them ready for mass suicide. And so the congressman, Leo Ryan, said, hey, look, there are some people who want to leave. And I think it was only 10 people. And Jim Jones, of course, he was also, he had cocaine in his system. I mean, he was mentally disturbed, and he went berserk. So, I mean, he just went crazy. And Leo Ryan and the media with 10 people, I think 10 or so people, left. And they went to the airport. It was a small little strip airport, and they were boarding the plane to get ready to leave it. And Jones ordered some of his security guards to show up, to follow them and kill them. And they did. And so Congressman Leo Ryan is one of the people that they killed. And at that time, now Jim Jones knew that was it. It was over. So he required, forced 918 people. Just 9 children, everybody, babies. He forced them to drink Kool-Aid. That's where you don't drink the Kool-Aid. He put cyanide in there. He put poison, and it was a terrible way. It was a horrific way to die. Horrific way to die. And he forced them. They didn't have a choice, because the security guards then showed up with their machine guns and M16. They didn't have a choice. He said that the government's going to come down now and arrest all of them and shoot them and kill them. And he forced them to drink the Kool-Aid. And they did. And they gave syringes to the babies. And they killed 918 people died. And you can watch, of course, Truth and Lies, Jonestown Paradise Lost. I think it's on Hulu. And Jonestown Terror in the Jungle as well. There's another group called Heaven's Gate. Very strange. Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles in 1970s. Heaven's Gate was an eccentric cult that had complicated belief system involving alien spaceships and an imminent recycling of the planet Earth. See, after Nettles died in 1985, Applewhite took the group to even further extremes. And in 1997, he began claiming that a spacecraft was following the Hale-Bopp comet. And this spacecraft would carry the Heaven's Gate members to the next level of existence. While living in a rented home in San Diego, beautiful home, Applewhite and 38 followers died by suicide. They all wore the same uniform, Nike shoes. They all had $5.75 in their pocket. And they all had the same haircut. Everything was, they became robotic. And keep in mind, these were very intelligent people. Very intelligent people who believed this. And that's what's so crazy. That's what's so insane about this, is that so many people were absolutely brilliant, and they fed into this, and it's sad. I do believe there are some people who, the Church of Scientology, people are asking me about the Church of Scientology. It certainly seems to have cult behavior. I have read many articles and where they do these testing on you, and you hold on to these little vices, and they ask you questions. They ask you repeated questions over and over and over and over. They have a celebrity wing where, of course, celebrities, wealthy people go there, and the people who have left the Church of Scientology have said that they ask you you have to divulge incredibly private information, and that that if you leave Scientology, that they will divulge that information, and your career would be it would be done. It would be over. And of course, that as the celebrity wing that they have, they amassed a great deal of wealth. So there certainly is some problems there. No question about that. No question. And there's a lot of people who believe that it is a cult. I certainly do not agree with their practices. There's nothing wrong with bettering yourself, but they are a very powerful group, and they certainly, without question, have connections, financial connections, banking connections, again, Hollywood connections, and which is fine. I understand that. I just, there's nothing wrong with having connections, but the problem is they use the information to frighten you, and they know that. Yeah, Leah Raymond's Raymond docuseries on Scientology. It was eye-opening. You're right. And you're right. Well, Tom Cruise is in Scientology. So is John Travolta. So is Presley, Priscilla Presley. So it's very problematic, very, very problematic. And I don't know. I never, ever, ever join a group. Never. Where you clearly see an individual who tries that individual is the center, and that worshiping that individual or elevating that individual to a deity, that's a cult. That is the very definition of a cult. Stay away from people like that. If you want to go to a religious community, you want to find a religious community, if all you see is, especially if they're just promoting them, that's it. And they're supposed to talk about God, and it's all about them, stay away from that. Stay away from it. Don't go to if you go to a church, or I don't care if it's a storefront church or if it's a building or what, and if you go and you see it on the altar as a big picture of the prophet, run away. Run away very fast. That's a cult. And those individuals are incredibly dangerous and very dangerous. Stay away. Yeah, Priscilla Presley, she's a member. So these, again, and one thing I could talk about also, can't do it now because we're running out of time. Well, actually, we're out of time for this hour, but there are lots of people right now in this world that claim to be Jesus Christ. Now, immediately you're saying, oh, yeah, I know. They're probably the mental institutions. Nope, actually, they're not. Jesus Miranda, he's passed away since, but he was in Miami, and he had a very, very active, a really active ministry. There were famous people who actually followed this clown. And I consider, with all point blank, I consider him there. The Bible talks about antichrists with a lowercase a. I absolutely consider him an antichrist. No question. No question. He was claiming that he was God. And not only was he claiming that he was God, he demanded his followers tattoo 666 on their body. 666. This guy was just pure, just evil. Evil. There was a Russian guy who claimed that he was a cop and got fired or quit or something. And then, of course, now he wears the long robe and he has the hair and the beard, and he claims to be the Jesus. And people worship. And there's actually a town. He actually built a town and a lot of followers. And of course, he's been arrested and he's in prison for, I think, fraud. But anybody, look, folks, here's the deal. If anybody tells you that they're Jesus, say, you know what? No, you're not. Get over yourself, narcissistic. And stay. Just don't fall into that trap. If someone is calling themselves a prophet and they're telling you that in order for them to prophesy over you, then you need to give them some type of seed money. Seed. They're a con artist. They're a con artist. They're not listening to God. They're listening to the devil. That is demonic. Because if they're receiving the message free from God, they should give that to you for free. That shouldn't be held over you because they're telling you that a loved one wants to tell you something, but you have to offer some type of love offering. No, you don't. No, you don't. Stay away from those people. They're con artists. They're liars. They're deceivers. Remember, even the devil can quote scripture. So just because you have somebody who can quote scripture and is a charismatic preacher, that's all great. But if they're telling you that they're a prophet and they're going to prophesy over you, but you got to first give them an offering, then what you need to offer is a goodbye. And that is the God's honest truth. Stay away because they're con artists. That's a cult. And I'm seeing a lot. I am seeing a lot on social media of these people claiming to be these prophets and that God's speaking to them and they want to give you a special message. I'm telling you, if you give them money, then all you're doing is you are continuing this, helping them continue this lie. And you certainly don't want to do that. You don't want to feed into their craziness. So you just don't want to. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But it's sick. It is sick. And I'm telling you that it's bad. So don't get entrapped into this. Don't believe that these people are going to help you. The only thing that they want to help is themselves. Anybody who tells you, as Jim Jones did, he threw the Bible down, said, you don't need to read, and he even cursed the Bible. He cursed it. Yeah, it's on video. I mean, it's on audio too. He cursed it. So stay away from them. Stay away from, I've talked about psychic mediums, and here's the deal. I know that there are people who are gifted. I've met them. And even in there's Roman Catholic exorcists that will tell you as well that they have met people that they are gifted. But there's a lot of people who say that they are, and then what they don't do is they don't stop. So in other words, if a person loses a family member, then a lot of these people say, well, your family member wants to tell us, they want you to tell you it's a very important message. Here it is. But they're fading away. They're fading away. So now, great. Isn't that convenient? They're fading. So now what do? You book another session because you want to know what your loved one has to say to you. And that's a con game. Don't get involved with that. If anybody ever does that to you, they're a con artist. It's awfully convenient when, if you have a 30-minute reading with somebody, that they say, oh, they're fading away. They're fading away. Well, isn't that convenient? But they're trying to tell me something. They're trying to tell me something about I think your grandmother or your mom. They're trying to tell me something, but they're fading away. And it's awfully convenient how they do that right at the end of your session. They're con artists. Plain and simple. Now, again, I met people who are truly gifted, and I have friends that are absolutely gifted, no doubt about it, but they don't con people. They don't do that. I don't know why my microphone keeps, it drives me crazy. It keeps going down. It's auto thing, but I don't have the auto thing on, so I don't know why it does that. Okay, so let's get into my movie review for The Pope's Exorcist. And I don't know if for those of you who may not know about it, the movie just came out. And let me just see here. Hold on a second. Follows Gabriel Morth, his life as an exorcist, as the chief exorcist of Rome. And there are some things that I liked about it, and then there are some things that I did not like about it. And so we'll talk about it right now. I'm going to tell you all the things that I liked and all the things that I did not. The IMDb rating is a 6.2 out of a 10. And it got some people really liked it, and some people like no. There's a lot of reviews on this. Robert Ebert, I think I'm sorry, Roger Ebert. He only gave it 2 stars, and this is what he said about it. In his original 1973 review of The Exorcist, Roger Ebert wrote about how right it was to cast the role of the older priest battling evil with a great character actor. Max von Sydow, and I agree. He's great. He was fantastic. So the Pope's Exorcist combines those 2 images by casting Russell Crowe in the lead role of Father Gabriel Amorth, a theologian, journalist, book author, and the Pope's designated exorcist. Amorth is a sly, tough, wisecracking priest who approaches each new mission like a gunslinger. And this is from Roger Ebert. Instead of pistols, rifles, and hunting knives, he has an exorcism kit with crucifixes and holy water that he carries around in a case the size of a saddlebag. His horse is a red and white scooter that's too small for Crowe's let it all hang out character actor body, but makes a perfect, wonderful sight gag for that reason. Amorth even has a tiny whiskey flask that he insists that he carries to ease his scratchy throat. He's written and performed like one of those wry, hard-bitten, bad people that used to be played in the 1960s Western age by aging but still popular action stars like Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas, and John Wayne. Their characters pointed to the hypocrisies of so-called civilization, but defended it anyway. They'd seen it all, but could not still be shocked. So it goes on and on and on. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a lot, but he didn't give it a great review. So for those of you who don't know what it's about, it basically follows. Well, thank you very much there. Oh, please. I appreciate that. Father Gabriel Amorth. He was a chief exorcist for the Vatican. He battles Satan and innocent possessing individuals. It's a detailed portrait of a priest who performed close to 100,000 people. So he say more than 100,000 exorcisms in his lifetime. There was a budget of $18 million. So let me just talk a little bit about it and what I think about this. Take me off your chat room. Don't want to hear this. Ooh, sign off. I don't want to. I'm not going to give. What do you mean? Take me off your chat room? We'll just leave. I don't understand. Here's the deal. There are a lot of things that were in this movie that were very good and that were very well done. The contortions of the body, the eye dilation, almost the reptilian, the facial distortions, the markings of the body, even the contortions of the body towards very unnatural, towards very animalistic. The voices was dead on. Even the hallucinations, which the demonic will often do. The violence was there, and I think even the intimidation factor was present. But so I think they got that right, and I think they did very well with that. They did a very good job capturing what could occur during an exorcism. Not all exorcisms happen like this. What you see in the movie. However, what I did not like about it was a couple of things. Number one, I'll just say this. Here's what I will say, because I think it's in the trailer, actually, so I'm not giving this away. During one of the exorcism session, Gabriel Amorth, Father Amorth, demanded that the demon enter him. And that is a big no-no. That's a huge no-no. And I do not believe Gabriel Amorth ever gave permission for a demon to enter him. No, I don't buy that at all. Only because he was very skilled. He was very knowledgeable. He had performed obviously many exorcisms, but and for him to say that would be out of character. Now, here's what happens during an exorcism. If you are, remember, the intellect and will of the exorcist and intellect and will of the demonic are at battle. Many times, if the exorcist becomes frustrated, perhaps because maybe you're fighting a demonic that is quite powerful, sometimes an exorcist can feel overwhelmed, frustrated, and even desperate. And if you ever get to a point, and an exorcist ever does that, that's when it's time to step out and get help. Because when you get that desperate, and you if an exorcist ever says to a demonic, enter me, that the intellect and will of the exorcist is being beaten. It's at a very weakened state. Now the exorcist is losing. That is an act of desperation. And an exorcist would never, ever say that. Ever say that. I'll answer that, Charity, in just a second. So an exorcist would, that is, because the moment you do this, that falls under what's called ordinary demonic activity. There's no way. There's no way. Now, you could be tempted. The demonic could certainly tempt you to do this out of frustration, out of desperation. And when you get to that level, you have to take a step out. You have to. Because the moment you do that, the battle is lost. It's done. And so I don't believe Gabriel Amorth did that at all. I just simply don't believe it. Now, Gabriel Amorth did have a sense of humor, almost. If you've ever seen the English movies or television shows, dry sense of humor, he had a sense of humor, and you have to. Not everything can be demons. You have to be able to laugh. You have to be able to enjoy life. You have to be able to see the joy in life. Because if you don't, then it can be very overwhelming. And I learned that firsthand as an exorcist. I've learned that firsthand because I was working some cases that were very violent, very aggressive, and the demonic was utilizing me and beating me. And that it was affecting my desire for more sugar, more carbs, more candy. When I stress, happy, bored, or whatever it was, went up to 420 pounds. When I did Exorcism Live on the Travel Channel, I was 420 pounds. So this stuff is real. So yeah, he had a wicked sense of humor, but you have to be able to enjoy life. It's not because everything can't be demons. So yeah, I understand that. I understand but when it was time for an exorcism, the jokes were done. There's a time and place for it. So I get that. I understand, the comedy, and just it's also a way to relieve some of that stress. I think Russell Crowe did a great job. I do. I think he did a good job in playing Gabriel Amorth. Now, I'm not. There are some things that I'm not a great big fan. Now, Father Amorth has passed away. May God rest his soul. But there were some things that I disagreed with on one of the things he was saying was yoga. Yoga was demonic, and I just disagree with that. I just don't buy that at all. I understand why he would think that, because there are some yoga practitioners that say you can leave your body and you can project your consciousness elsewhere. Well, I understand that New Age kind of mentality. I understand why he would say something like that. However, yoga in of itself, not projecting, not incorporating New Age, any type of mentality, just simply strengthening and flexing, and I think is very helpful, very beneficial. So I don't believe if you do yoga, I do yoga, and I have a herniated disc and degenerative disc disease. And so for me, I have yoga is very important. It is stretching. It is strengthening the body. Now, if you do yoga from that perspective, no, it's not demonic. But yes, if you leave your mind, if you project, astral project, you're leaving your body vulnerable. Well, of course, I would agree with him that that would be very dumb and very dangerous to do, and you shouldn't do it. So to me, I think that was a problem. Now, of course, then there was a lot. Okay, I will say this: there was certainly a lot of Hollywood creativity in the movie that I did not like, that I thought was stupid and completely and totally unnecessary. I truly did. It actually almost made the movie stupid because there were some things. It's like, okay, stop, just. That's what that I think that's what made the movie The Exorcist so intense and realistic, because it didn't get into all the Hollywood nonsense. Sometimes Hollywood can go to the extreme. And in this case, there were some scenes that were like, really, seriously, come on, stop, just stop. And I got irritated with that. I did. I got very, very irritated with that. To me, I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that they did that. They incorporated that. They didn't need to. And I think that, for me, ruined the movie, because you don't have to do that. And so I think for me, there were some good parts, and then there were some parts that were I got frustrated with. Would I recommend the movie? I guess so. But here's what I think people need to listen to this very carefully. I know a lot of people who claim to be exorcists, and they have never truly come across it. Never truly came across a true possession case. There's a lot of people playing exorcist. And I say that because I know that to be a fact. I've been in the paranormal community for over 20 years. And I've had quite a few people who claim to be exorcists who had no training. And then they get involved in a case that truly is demonic. And then they say, oh, I got myself in too deep. Yeah, now you come across something that's real. And then they contact me and say, hey, Bishop Long, I need some help. Now, I appreciate them calling. That's what you should do. If you need help, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're going around playing exorcist, that's a problem. That is a very serious problem. Because when you come across a case that's legitimate, if you don't know what you're doing, you're in big trouble. But quite honestly, many of the people playing exorcist, what they don't understand is that they probably will never ever come across. Some of them will never come across a true possession case because the demonic doesn't need to. Because the demonic has already beaten them. And they don't even realize it. Because they're playing exorcist. And that's blasphemy. They do it because they want to get credibility. They do it because they want to get famous in the paranormal. They do it because they want a television show, or they want whatever it might be. And so the demonic doesn't have to work at attacking them because they've already been beaten. This is something that this is not something you do because you try to separate yourself or try to establish a name for yourself. That is stupid. Unbelievably stupid, because you put yourself in some serious jeopardy, and not only yourself, but you can put other people in jeopardy too. And I am deeply troubled by so many people who are claiming to be exorcists. When I started in the paranormal community for over 20 years, let me tell you this, and I've said this before, over 20 years ago, do you know how many exorcists were in the paranormal community? 2. And I was one of them. Over 20 years ago, it was only 2. It was me and Father Andrew Calder. Andy's passed away. He was a friend of mine. Andy did not feel comfortable performing the solemn rite of exorcism on individuals who were possessed. He would perform a blessing on a home, the minor rite of exorcism. He would pray a deliverance, but when it comes to performing the solemn rite, he was very uncomfortable with that. There were two. I was there. So people say, well, I've been doing this for 30 years. No, you haven't. I was there. I was involved in the paranormal community over 20 years ago. You were not there. Don't sit there and say you were, because now what people are saying is I've been there for 30 years and they're 35 years old. So a lot of people are doing that now. So they're saying, well, I've been an exorcist for 30 years and they're 35. Come on. That's a joke. And that's why a lot of people will take, I'm in my 50s. So people who sit there and say that, they've been doing this for 30 years and they're 35 years, it's just nonsense. It's utter nonsense. And it's a mockery. It makes a mockery of it. So what happens is if they do come across a true case, and then they realize, oh, I'm a bit over my head. Well, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. Stop playing exorcist, because it's very dangerous. The Vatican certainly has exorcists. Yeah, I have seen the exorcism of Emily Rose, and I have the case file and I have sound bites, legitimate sound. There's sound bites online, but they're all fake. Majority of them are fake. I'm convinced 100% that not only did Emily Rose, Annalise Mikel is her name, not only did she have grand mal epilepsy, but I do believe she was possessed based on what happened to her. Now, someone said on the Facebook, I think it was Facebook, that you are a psychiatric nurse. And how do you determine whether or not someone is possessed versus if an individual just has mental illness? Well, first of all, let me just make this clear. A person who has mental illness can be possessed. So I think Andy was trying to, I would love to, I've written one book called Through the Eyes of an Exorcist, but to be honest with you, I'm not a great writer when it comes to that. I would love to find somebody who can ghost write, because I would love to make a book, an intense book on cases and demonology and teaching. But I need somebody who is really, really energetic, who is going to be as dedicated and devoted as I am, and who has that ability to write and who will remain confidential. It's hard to find that. But Emily Rose, I'm convinced that she was possessed, and a person can be mentally ill and be possessed as well. Now, how do you know this? Well, let's talk about schizophrenia. Demonic oppression and demonic obsession. So again, for those of you who are brand new, some of you may not know, we have three stages of possession. You have infestation, oppression, possession. So demonic has infested itself within the building, within a home. I do believe the movie, The Pope's Exorcist, did a great job with showing what infestation would be like. I also think that they did a great job with showing what oppression is like. And I do believe they did a fantastic job at showing how it affects the body and then how it attacks the body. They did a great job with that. That was 100% realistic. So I do give them props on that. No question. So someone is talking about how schizophrenia versus demonic possession. Well, when the demonic will attack an individual through demonic oppression, demonic obsession, it mimics schizophrenia because the person will begin seeing and hearing what Annalise Mikel has described as ghastly figures. So you begin hearing it. And even one case that I had, not only did they hear it in the oppression stage, but they could feel the warm, filthy breath that they described. It was putrid. They could feel it when it was speaking to them. They could actually feel the warmth on their cheek and the smell. What they said was putrid. And so it attacks. It basically is trying to isolate you from your family, isolate you from your loved ones, from your support group. It's breaking down the intellect and will. So the person becomes very weak, and then it goes into possession. So how do you determine whether or not someone is schizophrenic or a mental illness versus someone who has who's possessed? Well, Several things. Number one, a person who's possessed, a person who has a mental illness will not cause you to levitate. Also, the contortion of the body is very unnatural, very, very unnatural. Now, when I say unnatural, I mean it's serpent-like, but it is a contortion that is so unnatural. You think that at one time I had a case. I talked about this before. A demonic, the person was possessed, and the individual was looking right at me. Nothing. There was a blank. There was just a blank stare, but a smirk. And they took the right arm, and they kept twisting and twisting and twisting. No grimace, just a smirk, twisting and then you heard a snap, and the arm just went down. And when you see something like that, obviously that's a mental illness. There was no expression of pain. It was just a complete void of life. So, but the contortion occurs, and it's very serpent-like. Even the eyes, the facial expression changes to where it's unnatural, something that you could not control. There's no way you could do the contortions that occur on the body. I'm not talking about just that. We can control that. I'm talking about contortions where it's very serpent-like. And even the eyes. Now, the eyes going solid black could also be a neurological condition. So certainly individuals who have neurological conditions can have their eyes, if they're in a rage state, it's called temporary insanity, or basically the term technically is called lucid interval. And lucid interval is temporary insanity. And many times in cases like John Wayne Gacy, an individual who survived his attack described his eyes going black. He entered into this lucid state. Now, could John Wayne Gacy, could he have been possessed? Well, certainly. But I also think he was suffering from extreme mental illness as well. There's a term called a retrocognition. A retrocognition is the ability to know your sins. And that certainly is not mental illness. And that is why in exorcists, we will always, always receive the sacrament of reconciliation prior to performing an exorcism. One line that I really loved in the movie, this was great. One of the greatest lines, I think, truly in the movie, The Pope's Exorcist. When the demonic was using the sins against the priest, and they will often do that even with hallucination, with voices, mimicking the loved one's voice. The demonic was using the sins against the priest, and the priest says, "My sins have been forgiven." Russell Crowe's character, Gabriel Moore, said that. But the demon looked right at him and said, "But you haven't forgiven yourself." And I thought that was profound. That was absolutely profound. And that was probably one of the best lines, I think, in the entire movie. Because the demonic can, if you hold on to that guilt, and you don't allow yourself to you don't offer forgiveness to yourself, the demonic can use that against you, and it will. So whatever the most private things that you've done, and the most sinful things that you've done, if you do not go to the sacrament of reconciliation, which again, in Matthew 6, then the demonic can use that against you, and will absolutely use it against you. And it's basically, these are parlor tricks to stop you. It's a distraction to cause you to stop the right. So that's okay. So how do you get a prayer of deliverance done over you? Do you need an exorcist to do it, Bishop Long? That's a good question. Now here are three terms. There's the minor rite of exorcism, there's a deliverance, and then there's the solemn rite of exorcism. The minor rite of exorcism is a blessing. It's you bless a home in which a demonic has infested itself within the home or building. And I've said this for over 20 years. And I've been teaching the paranormal community this, and people are teaching this, which I think is good, and I appreciate that. But I've been teaching this for over 20 years. You cannot perform an exorcism on a building or house. It doesn't exist. It's absurd. You bless the home. You do not perform an exorcism on a building. It doesn't exist. You perform an exorcism on a demonic entity that has infested itself within the building. So that's the minor rite of exorcism. That's to expel a demonic entity from a building or a home in which is infested. A deliverance is prayed over an individual who is under the stage of oppression. This is very dangerous. And I'm seeing this a lot. I'm seeing a lot of people bring deliverances over people. I'm concerned about that. And here's why. People who are not trained, because even in the stage of deliverance, you need to know there are stages. And you need to know where this person is, because if you're not careful, the person can go into transient possession. I do not believe, and this is me, that you can perform an exorcism over Zoom or over StreamYard or over any type of media. You need to use the sacramentals of the church. Sacramentals of the church is oil, holy oil, blessed holy water, rosaries, incense, salt. I think that is you have to have the elements. I'm very old school when it comes to this. Also, when you're doing a deliverance over Zoom, you only seeing only a portrait of the individual. There are things you need to look for that I'm not going to tell you what they look for. I'm not going to do that. But there are things that an exorcist will know to look for to determine if this person is going into transient possession. Because under oppression, that is a stage leading to possession. And if you don't know where the person is or how long they've been oppressed, the moment you begin praying a prayer of deliverance, you are provoking. That is provocation. And depending on where the person's, how weak in their intellect and will is, if you begin praying deliverance and the demonic then enters and presents itself, that person can go into transient possession. And then what are you going to do? What are you going to do then? Now, people say, well, I pray in the name of Jesus Christ, and I pray and the demonic will laugh at you. It will laugh at you. It will mock you. I do not believe performing an exorcism on someone can be done over Zoom. I just don't believe it. And I know there are exorcists who believe that. I disagree with them. I completely disagree. But you have to know that if you begin praying a prayer of deliverance over someone and you're not physically there, then what are you going to do if the person goes into transient possession? So this is a problem. And a lot of people are doing this online. What I'm trying to do is not trying to start fights with people. I'm just trying to let people know what's going on out there. And I'm seeing a lot of people doing these deliverance prayers. And I think deliverance prayers can be good, and they are good, but you've got to know where the person is in that stage. Because if that person is at a very weakened state, and their intellect and will is practically eradicated, then you begin praying a prayer of deliverance, that possession can occur. And now you're in trouble. But more importantly, the person who is possessed is now in trouble. So there are, a person can speak in languages that they don't know. So I prayed the Our Father in Aramaic once during an exorcism, and the demonic said the Our Father backwards in Aramaic as a form of mockery. I mean, I wouldn't even know how to say the Our Father back. I mean, it was just spitting it out. There was no hesitation. I can't even say the Our Father in English backwards, let alone in Aramaic. So it's, Abundas Maya Makata Shamuk. That's how it starts. But it's, I don't know. There are things that should be left alone. And so many people are using the tagline exorcist. And I just don't like that. This is, let me tell you, and I don't want anyone, I'm not looking for applause. I'm not looking, oh, good for you, Bishop. I'm not looking for any of that stuff. I have taken a vow of celibacy, not because it's mandatory for our denomination, because we can get married. I can't bring you on. I'll bring you on, guys, a little bit later. But I've taken a vow of celibacy because of the things that I've seen. I'm not going to bring a family into my life. Just not going to. And not because I wouldn't want a family, but because I wouldn't want to cause my family then to be the target. Because remember, a demonic entity can attack my family to get to me. And they will use anything and everything to get to an exorcist. And so I have taken a vow of celibacy. And truthfully, I'll be celibate for the rest of my life. This is not something that I'm doing on a weekend just because I'm bored on a Saturday night. Because I can't look. I don't charge for exorcisms. I've never charged to perform an exorcism. I never will. So I make no money off this, none. So people can't say, well, you're just doing this for fame. Again, I've said this a million times. You do things for fame so you can make money. Well, if I'm not making money, then the fame is kind of stupid. It's irrelevant. But I can't deny what I've seen. So people say, well, prove to me that demons exist. I don't have to prove to you that demons exist. Jesus already said they do. So there's no proof I can give you that Jesus has already declared demons exist. That was a ministry that Jesus bestowed upon the disciples. So I don't have to prove that demons exist. Nope. I'm not here to prove demons exist to anybody. I am here to help the families who know that they do. And that is, you know, because I was really stressed out when I first started this ministry. People kept telling me, and I was so passionate about wanting to prove that demons exist. And it was bothering me. It was really eating me up because people were saying, just prove it. And I was so irritated because I was trying to teach people and just prove it. And it was affecting my vocations. So I was in night prayer one time. And when I was going through this extreme stress, and a calmness just overcame me. And that's when I realized at that moment, and I believe that is the Holy Spirit, I believe that is God telling me, James, you are not here to prove that demons exist. You are here to help the families who know they do. And that's where I come with, that's where I created this quote. It was in Compline because I was very stressed about that because I wanted people to believe that this stuff is real. And I don't have to prove that. I had the daughter on of a 68-year-old woman who was violently attacked. And it was one of the most emotional cases I've ever worked. And the thing is I try to always, I try to be the stoic Bishop Long. You know, when I go into a place, I'm the exorcist stoic Bishop Long, stay focused, no emotions, just do the right focus. But this is one of those cases where I was emotionally broken. And I can admit I was emotionally broken. She was 68 years old, and I just loved her. She was one of the nicest, most beautiful human beings in the world, would do anything for anybody. And what she went through was pure hell. Pure hell. I had her daughter on the show, and Angie, she talked about it. And I got involved because the 68-year-old woman, we'll just call her Jackie. That's not her name. We'll call her Jackie. But she was in the hospital. And she had a trauma. You know, I got to be careful about what I say because I don't know if she had trauma inflicted on certain parts of her body that required medical attention. It was violent. She described it as a plunger being used. And she described them as bed walkers. So this was a incubus case where she'd be held down. She would feel them walking towards her. She described them as 3 she told me they were like 3 10-pound dogs. That's how she described them, or cats or animals. I can't remember. I thought she said dogs, but she could feel them walking towards her on her bed. They would hold her down, and it was very violent. Very violent. She was awake. This was not sleep paralysis. And so I got involved, and I worked with her for 3 years. And I got really upset. I understand where an exorcist would get so frustrated that, you would just almost to the point of saying, just come into me and leave her alone. And that's when you need to take, because I got to that point. I got to that point where I was being broken down. But finally, after 3 years of working with her, the last year of her life, she was no longer being assaulted. She could still feel the bed walkers, but they would no longer hold her down. Well, that's true, Janelle. In the Roman Catholic Church, Roman Catholics cannot. They cannot marry. Actually, there are some Roman Catholic priests that can marry. They've actually converted to Roman Catholicism. So, but there's a lot of people, who claim, oh, I did this and I did this and I did that. And I don't know. So anyway, how does it happen? Well, I thought that the only way we could have explained it is with her, is Santeria. It was a black, and Santeria. Some people say, "Now wait a minute, Santeria is not evil," but this was a evil curse that was placed upon her. What she told me is that her daughter-in-law cut a piece of her hair because she wanted her property, and she wanted her to go into like a nursing home, and she wouldn't want to do it. She was a strong woman. I mean, this woman's the 68-year-old woman. She was strong. She had a lot of energy and love, and she was spicy, and she was not a pushover. And that's the only thing that I can think of that caused it. That's the only thing. So I can't think of any other, because we always try to find the root cause of either an incubus or succubus or possession or demonic infestation. What happened? How did it start? And it could be a pre-existing haunting. So, for example, let's say you go into a location, you move into a house, and satanic rituals were performed, black magic was performed. And I'm going to tell you something straightforward. If anybody tells you that Satanists don't worship Satan, they're a big fat liar. You need to turn away. They're a liar. They're deceiving you. That is the father of lies, deceiving you. And I don't care who I make mad with that. Anybody who tells you they are Satanists and they don't worship Satan, okay, that's fine. That's like a woman who's pregnant telling you she's not pregnant. I'm sorry. Or that's like putting makeup on a pig and telling you that's a cow. Don't buy it. That is a lie. That is deception, and it's purposeful deception to make you believe, oh no, these are not people who worship Satan. That's a father of lies. Do not fall into that trap. They're liars. Because it's awfully funny how even people who call themselves Luciferians will have satanic symbols behind them on social media. Now, wait a minute. If you're a Luciferian and you just follow the light bearer, the light bringer angel, then why in the hell are you putting satanic symbols behind you? Don't fall into that trap. Do not fall into that trap. Nope, the sons of God were not giants. They are not fallen angels. The sons of God are the fallen angels. No. That's so someone asked that question about the sons of God. No, the sons of God are not fallen angels, demons who made it with women. Absolutely incorrect. Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 tells us this. So again, the Nephilim were not offspring of angels and women. The Nephilim, Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 tells us the Nephilim existed before and after the sons of God had relationships with women. So therefore, the sons of God, so the Nephilim could not be the offspring of angels and women. The only reason people tell you that is because they're trying to sell you a documentary. That's it. That's the God's honest truth. It's not simply not true. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4 tells us this. Ask any rabbi, the sons of God were the offspring of Seth. Seth is the third child of Adam and Eve. Any rabbi will tell you this. They were not the Nephilim. The Nephilim were actually, in Greek, it means fierce warriors, not giants. It does not mean offspring of demons and angels. Or I'm sorry, demons and women. Jesus says very clearly that angels cannot marry. They cannot mate. It is incorrect. It is theological. Okay. So for those, I've been told 3 minutes. Okay. For those of you in Spreaker, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to say good night to you. I wish I could stay with you all night, but TikTok, I'll stay with you guys for a little bit. We had a lot to go over, a lot to cover tonight. And don't worry, we'll continue. I always tell you, my friends, that your value does not decrease based on someone's inability or refusal to see your worth. Remember, my friends, you are priceless, and never let anybody tell you otherwise. Facebook, KGRADB, YouTube, Twitter. Good night.
The Sacred Division has been brought to you by Bishop Long's online paranormal course. Learn demonology, angelology, paranormal studies, and genealogy. It's 100% online, and you learn at your own pace. Please go to www.bishopjameslong.com and click on the paranormal course link.